It's fair to say that Mamelodi Sundowns impressed the world. People were saying all sorts of things, and we also saw Dortmund fans taking pictures with Abo Ribeiro, and we also saw some critics of Mamelodi Sundowns, people who don't like Sundowns, saying some nice things about Sundowns. So in this video, we are going to look at how exactly Mamelodi Sundowns did that, but at the same time, how some naivety from the coach's side also cost them the game. Now, let's start with how Mamelodi Sundowns were looking to play when they had the ball. The two people who were very important to that structure were those two, Marcelo Allende and Tebogo Mokoena, who were always there receiving the ball. And when they had the ball, they turn around, they carry the ball. And if they see that there's a pass behind the pressing of Dortmund, then they would be able to play the ball behind. Also, take note of Lucas Ribeiro, because we'll come back to that, because it's also another very important thing in this game. So, first chance, Matthews misses a chance. Matthews really needs to stop missing chances, because he did the same thing in the final against Pyramids. But we move. So, right. What ended up happening then is that you see that Dortmund has like 4 people in midfield, and you're asking yourself, okay, if Ronan Williams has the ball there, where is the next pass going? Maybe safe, maybe wide. No, he sees Allende right there, and he finds him. And Allende, being that comfortable on the ball, is able to turn with the ball. And now we focus on the second thing that Sundowns needed to do. You see the positioning of Lucas Ribeiro Costa relative to Mshishi. Those two players are very comfortable on the ball. They can take care of the ball. They can dribble. They can play 1-2. So they needed to be very close to each other. And soon I'll show you the average position to see how close they were. Because what they wanted to do is, knowing that Dortmund will press them, they needed to be calm. And those two people, I think if I look around South African football, I can't think of anyone better. And in that position, they can then just receive the ball from Allende, and then they can just combine and move the ball forward. Here you see the same thing. You see that Matthews and Ribeiro are actually so inverted. They are so pushed inwards. You're like, I thought these guys were supposed to be wingers who can invert in the final third. But no, this is early on. Sundowns are playing at the back here, but they already are inside. And this comes down to mainly one thing. This. What is this? This is the average player position for Mamelodi Sundowns. So this shows you that average overall in the game, this is how Mamelodi Sundowns looked. This is what they were trying to do when they had the ball. They were trying to use Longa and Mudau to be as wide as possible so that they can stretch Dortmund, and then that might perhaps create space for all those players in the middle. Tebogo Mokoena, number 4, number 11, Allende, 18, Tembazwane, and 10, Lucas Ribeiro Costa. So, since the width was coming from Umtao Nolunga, that is why now they were able to invert their wingers in Ribeiro and Matthews. And by the way, this is why Umotiba is likely not going to be playing for Sundowns that much next year, because he's not that much of a player who's wide, but sometimes he inverts and is comfortable with playing and combining in midfield. But Tulunga is comfortable with going up and down the wing, and that is why now this is going to be his position. By the way, my position is I need people to subscribe to the channel so that I can reach 100,000 subscribers. I know we're still 9,000, but I know we can do this. Come on. If you want to talk about tactics of football, just make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Now, we continue here because we now know what Sundowns were trying to do. But you also see here, when it comes to the goal of Mamelodi Sundowns, it's the same thing. They are under pressure, but they are composed, and they keep the distances between them very short. This minimizes the thing of having to play switches or play long balls, which can be intercepted, but play simple short passes. And that's exactly what happens here. Because you have the ball being played to who? To Ribeiro. If Ribeiro just turned around, he could still find Zwane, but Dortmund would still be in trouble. But this time around, he turns and then he just drives and then scores the first goal. It's just beautiful. But to see that even if Ripero didn't go on his own, he had found Tembazwane and moved forward, they still would have scored a goal. It just shows you that their setup, the confidence and the approach of a game would have gotten them this goal in any case. But then after that, you continue to see the same kind of patterns. Tebogo Mokoena dropping into the box there. You see they're just playing comfortably in the box. And then disaster strikes. Same thing. Do you realize that this thing is not the same movement? This is from few minutes, literally a minute before the goal goes in. Mokoena is in the box. They pass in the ball and he relaxes, he passes it back. A minute later, he's in the box again. But this time, he's pressed and then Dortmund score their goal. Like, you see that they were living by the sword, but they're also dying by the sword. Like, they were not changing their style of play. It worked for them, but then Yabakawata. Then you saw Mokoena being a libero. What is a libero? A libero is basically a midfielder who can drop back and become part of a center back. He can even play behind them. The whole point of a libero is to basically help in build-up in teams that need, well, they don't have to not have center backs that can play, but you just need to have more people who can play the ball, hence dropping a midfielder to be a libero. So what also this accomplished is that Mokoena would then avoid this press, because you can see there's 5 Dortmund people pressing the midfield. So with Mokoena accessing the ball much earlier, he can be able to play the ball wide and do other things and not be caught with the ball. And here for the goal, you see that they are doing rotations. Now it's not Mokoena being the one who's deepest in the Sundowns midfield, but this time around it's Tembazwane. And now you have Mokoena being the one who's pressed. Now, the thing is here, it's a double-edged sword, because the rotations keep the team guessing, right? But at the same time, if you put Mokoena in a position where Zwane is supposed to be, Zwane is better than Mokoena at beating the press, at not being pressed, right? But Mokoena is still capable of doing that. So you are hoping that if he goes in there, he will be able to do the same thing that Zwane does, even if you rotate them. But that's not always the case. And especially if you are playing against a team that is at a higher level than you. And that's the unfortunate thing that happened with Sundowns, because then they press Mokoena, they win the ball back, cross it, then they score. And then now it's 2-1. Now after this, Mokoena was just tightly marked. This is him being marked by Kuras, and 10 seconds later, like check. He's marked here. And then you count 10 seconds later, he's still close to him. But what I find interesting is that they're still passing the ball when Kurasi gives him like 2 meters. And he's still able to get the ball and combine well with Ushigabala, and then they move the ball forward. Second half, they had the same approach. I mean, it wasn't broken, so I fixed it. In fact, it was kind of broken a bit, not really. It's just that small mistakes that could have been avoided. So as a coach, you would say, guys, let's just limit the amount of touches. Let's make sure we can play the first touch out of the press. But we're still doing the same thing because it's working for us. So they continued doing the same thing. And indeed, they were able to get the second goal like that, because it was a free kick. But look where it started. You have Ripero Costa getting the ball again in that half space. And then he combines with Allende, who then gives him the ball. And then as he drives with the ball, he gets fouled. And from that foul, Reina's heads, it bounces back, and then he scores the goal. So this just goes to show you that the method that Sundowns were utilizing to just combine and play those players and trust them with the ball, it absolutely worked. Now let's look at them in defense, because their defense from the get-go, this is what they did. Look at the press. Yes, there is a trigger there. Velegan football coaches will, usually there are 3 passing triggers. 1, when the ball is passed back. So basically what a trigger is we're saying that, okay, we're going to stay in shape. When the ball is passed back, we press. So in this case, when the ball is passed back, when the ball is passed to the goalkeeper, when there is a heavy touch, sometimes when the ball is passed to the side, sometimes when the ball is passed to the weaker player, like what Chiefs did when they were playing against Sundowns, when they were pressing Suarez. But also Pirates did the same thing. Everyone was just pressing Suarez because they knew he had a mistake in him. So that's an example of a trigger being a person with, okay, the person gets the ball, we press them because they are not that comfortable. So Sundowns, early on, you see that, okay, they are very aggressive in their press. but it's very hot in that country. Pela kusebusika la South Africa. But camera, come on, what are you doing now? It's winter in South Africa, but it's summer in the United States, and they're even getting water breaks. So starting at that pace and thinking you can keep up the whole game, I looked at it and was like, guys, come on. Right? And you start to see this thing when they were getting tired. And here's another thing I'm not a fan of. This 4-1-4-1 shape, I don't get it, because you see that all that has to be done is that once the ball passes those four, then now you have one defensive midfielder against the person he has to press who's wide, and then the other person who's on the right side of him, and then the person that is marking. How is he going to deal with that? And we see this perfectly in the fourth goal. You see that the four Sundowns players who are forming that 4-1-4-1, which is Renas up front. Now those four are there, but behind them, there are two players who are 2v1 versus Mokoena. And all it takes is one pass that cracks the line open, and then it's a combination play, and then they find themselves scoring a goal from a shape that was wide open. And the other clips that I'm not going to put because the video is already 11 minutes long. But the press has to change. The 4-1-4-1, I feel guys, I really don't. And even the teams that I've seen play it, even Madrid, I saw them, they were playing 4-1-4-1. Al Hilal just play the ball around them because it's not convincing, that press. And then we can obviously say that the press still worked, and then they scored the goal via Shalulile. But also what's important to note is that these were two, not Shalulile, Motiba. What's also important to note is the fact that that press worked because these were people who still had fresh legs and they could be able to go in and press. Just like Reyners was doing in the first half. He still had energy, he still could press. Letlako comes in, he still has energy, he still presses, wins the ball back, and then they score. But Sundowns dominated Dortmund. Sundowns were a better team, and everyone saw Sundowns and they're like, that is a good team. Yes, they were brilliant. Tear us down. But what did you guys think? Do let me know down in the comment section below. Have you subscribed? If you haven't, do make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.